we've got Chelsea Jackson here with us to talk about cabinets. Chelsea, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I've been a cabinet designer for about 6 years, but I've actually been doing some type of design for about 29 years. So it's just kind of the way my mind works. I'm always doing design. Currently, I'm with the Seattle location of the Contract Furnishings Mart, also known as CFM. I've been here about 4 years.
So cabinets frequently take up a large portion of the budget when it comes to kitchen designs. Chelsea, do you think you could talk about a few things that can help keep this part of the budget down in terms of cost, and some of the things that maybe make cabinetry really jump up in price?
So one factor is the actual construction of the cabinet box itself. So there's the option for plywood upgrade, and that's usually about a 15% upgrade. So that's a big savings. And depending on what type of cabinet, you don't always need plywood. Frameless cabinetry, the hinges are installed right into the side of the cabinet. So that makes what the cabinet's made out of a little more important. So if you have children or this is a rental, sometimes it's worth the 15% to upgrade to the plywood. But when you have a framed cabinetry that has a face frame placed on the front, your hinges and stuff install into that hardwood frame. So once it's on the wall, the cabinets aren't going anywhere. So that material is not as important. Some other factors are doors. So a good way to figure out what's going to make a door more expensive is how detailed the door is. Things like mitered corners, those tend to cost more. The more like beaded detail or grooves or raised panel, things like that will make a door more expensive. Also, the finishes on the doors. So a stain is always going to be one of your least expensive options. But when you do a paint, often paint will add an upcharge, not always, but sometimes. And then when you add even more steps, such as glazes or sand through, distressing, all those things require more time, so therefore they add more cost. So those are ways to keep your costs down if you don't need all those types of finishes. Also, the more material in a cabinet, the more cost. So for example, if you have a 36-inch space, you could put two 18-inch wide cabinets, but if you put one 36-inch wide cabinet, you're probably going to save at least a couple $100s by choosing one cabinet instead of two. Another way to look at it is all cabinets have a box. That's your side, your top, your bottom, your back, and the front of the cabinet. So let's say you have a cabinet with just doors. That's going to be far less expensive than a cabinet that has 3 drawers inside because it has a lot more material. So the more material used on the cabinet, the higher the cost.
All right. What is your must-have in every design, if possible?
So the must-have that I see most often and recommend is like a trash and recycle cabinet. They are almost in every design that I do, because people don't want to see their trash cans sitting in their kitchen, especially when they've spent all this time and money on having a beautiful space made, and then you've got a trash can sitting in the corner. So those cabinets are super usable. They're great to hide. Some people always want to have it underneath the sink, but with things like farmhouse sinks being popular, the space under your sink is a lot shorter, so you can't really put trash and recycle down there. And surprisingly, most cabinet manufacturers will not put trash and recycle into a sink-based cabinet. And that's because there is just such a wide variety of plumbing, and they can never predict what that's going to be.
So I'm actually going to have to second what Chelsea says. That is my one go-to that I always put in a kitchen. I always find a spot for it. The trash is just something that most people also don't think about until it's too late. So it's really important to think about it on the front end, because it is by far my favorite feature, and one that in my new house, I'm very sad that I don't have.
In talking about the process of designing and building cabinetry, what are some of the typical lead times for standard, semi, and custom cabinetry, and why do they take so long?
I would say your standard cabinets are going to be cabinets that are made out of pretty inexpensive material, and these are going to be like the ones that you can pull off the shelf at a box store like Lowe's or Home Depot. They're ready-made. There's only certain sizes available. If they're on the shelf, they're immediate. So they're really good for those last-minute projects. However, they don't have the quality to withstand time. For that, I highly recommend moving up to semi-custom cabinets. Semi-custom cabinets can have a lead time ranging from 4 to 8 weeks. Just kind of depends on which manufacturer and what type of product you're getting. Like I talked about a little earlier, the more detail, it obviously takes more time. And semi-custom, to kind of explain what that means, it is truly a custom cabinet when you order semi-custom. What the semi means is that they kind of have templates of preset sizes that they start with, where they've already figured out the engineering and the structure of the cabinet. They can modify those sizes, but they are essentially starting with a template, and that keeps costs down. But everything is 100% custom made for every single project, which is another reason why those lead times are so long. Semi-custom cabinets are made in factories. So there's an assembly line process. They go through different stages. A lot of times the doors are actually purchased from another source. Not always, but sometimes. So when an order is placed, you have to wait for those cabinet doors to come in. And this is important because some people don't understand why they can't make changes to their cabinets after they're ordered. And that's because they've already purchased those door sizes and they're committed to that. But once it's in production, they're making the box, they're assembling it, they're going through specialty finish processes. I mean, cabinets have really high levels of finishes, whether it's a conversion varnish or a double baked on process. Their finishes are extremely durable, but that takes time. And then, of course, fully assemble it, inspect it, package it, all those things, they just add up to time. And then you've got your custom cabinets, which they don't have that template per se. They basically are having to figure out the engineering for every kitchen and the design within that kitchen. So this is usually a shop, and it's only working with like several people. So they are typically working on one project at a time. So they might be able to make changes because they haven't made it yet. But when you put that extra time, you're going to pay for that too. So custom is often the highest cost.
Amanda, from the perspective of an interior designer, what are some other factors that go into that cabinetry lead time?
So there's a lot of different factors that go into play other than just the manufacturing. You know, Chelsea brought up the lead times from when you order, you really can't make any changes. But in addition to that, you're really looking at closer to 2 to 3 weeks before you order that you really can't make any changes. Something that I always like to emphasize is that I'm not the end drawing for cabinets. So cabinet makers have their own system that they have to do drawings for, because those drawings then get translated into, you know, depending on the manufacturer, maybe it's the computer that's helping build them, or it's the just the engineering that goes into them. They have to have their own system. So they need some time to work those up, and then those have to get approved by us as well. So really, we need those final decisions 2 to 3 weeks before we order. And honestly, most of those decisions too are really pending all of our other selections. We can't make any decisions on cabinetry until we know what size range we're going to be doing, what size refrigerator we're going to do, what type of countertop material. You know, you don't want to put a super heavy countertop material on a really flimsy box. So we need to make sure that we have all of those components before we order those cabinets, and all of those decisions really have to be solid when it comes time to order these and get those our drawings over to the cabinet maker.
What is the most unique cabinet element design that you have ever worked on?
I can say what my favorite has been, and I've done several kitchens like this, and this is where you actually are incorporating the outside into the inside of the kitchen. So they'll often do a set of cabinets, and then they have a window that's flush with the cabinets, and those windows are like bifold or lift up. Some people even use like a garage door style, but you can open that space up, and then on the other side, you kind of have a bar atmosphere. And this makes it so useful when you're hosting, because you can, you know, take food in and out of the kitchen easily, and it also opens up the space like you are cooking outside. So I just think that's super unique and creative, and I love that concept.
The question that I think everybody is dying to know the answer to: pull or knob?
It's a personal preference. I often refer to the hardware on the cabinets as the jewelry to the outfit. So you can make some wrong decisions, but mostly it's kind of like, what do you like? What are you attracted to? I personally, I love pulls. I just think that you can have more unique characteristics with them. They're a little bit more flashy. So I like pulls. Some people like knobs because they're understated. But there's essentially 4 combinations. You can do all the cabinets and pulls. You can do all the cabinets and knobs. You could do knobs on the doors, pulls on the drawers, or knobs on the drawers and knobs on the doors. That's essentially what it comes down to. Pick one of those 4 and you can't go wrong.
Amanda, knobs or pulls?
Really depends on the kitchen. I have loved doing all 4 of those combinations in any particular kitchen, because there are some kitchens that really lend itself to needing to be more understated. So then the knob is really where I want to go with that. Or, there's some kitchens, like you said, it's the jewelry piece. So it really needs to make a statement. So we'll go a little bit farther into it. So for me, it kind of goes either way. But lately I've been into knobs just because I found that they're starting to come out with some more unique ones with the knobs, and I think that it's kind of fun to see the new and latest and greatest, but I can't say I can make a definitive statement on that one.
Chelsea, what have you been seeing design-wise lately? Any upcoming trends in cabinetry or things that people are seeming to prefer more often? What have you been seeing as a specifically cabinet designer?
Fortunately, working in the Seattle area, I tend to see the fashion forward things, the things that are all coming into style very early in the process, which I think is fantastic. What I've definitely seen coming is combinations of metal and either like wood, paint, or a laminate material, but metal is really coming into the cabinetry a lot. So it could be metal framing, metal legs, metal feet, metal structures supporting the shelves, metal panels, but there definitely seems to be a trend of having metal, and most often with some type of wood element.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would really want to have more of your end user clients know ahead of time? What's that one thing that everybody should know about cabinetry design?
Whether they want a framed or a frameless cabinet, because that actually will tip the scale of what kind of design your whole kitchen is going to have. Frameless is definitely more of a modern, clean, transitional style. Framed cabinetry is definitely more traditional and transitional. So if you know what your clients are wanting, you can encourage them to go into one line or the other. But if they walk in and they love traditional and they're asking for, let's say, Belmont cabinets, I know that they'd be better served using a framed line.
As a designer, of all the things you could design, why cabinets?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because when I started off in floral design, and then I went into interior design, and then I landed in cabinetry design. When I was an interior designer, cabinetry design intimidated me so much. I was just like, oh, there must be so many rules and I don't know how they do that. And I was just so impressed looking at these beautiful kitchens. And an opportunity came up where I just had the opportunity to learn how to be a cabinet designer. And I said, what the hell? And I took advantage of it and I loved it. Being an interior designer, there's a lot of different branches to that. There's a lot of things going on. And I really fell in love with the simplicity of just the cabinets. I also am very right and left brained. So I like having kind of the engineering mind, but I also have a very creative mind, and it's a perfect combination of that. So that's kind of why I enjoy it so much.
Thanks for joining us on this week's video in the Design Build video series. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and to stay tuned for next week's video focusing on our sub party.